Hey guys, it's Vandiazo by Recovery Vanguard deck profiles. If you guys enjoyed, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and story. So this time we have another deck from DZ Set 10, this time featuring Keter Sanctuary's Liael equals Draconis. I know it's just Liael Draconis, I just choose to pronounce the equals because it's fun for me. How do I feel about this deck? For those of you who don't know, I loathe Erica in the anime. I never really liked her in particular, but I didn't hate her either until she stole the spot that now rightfully deserved, in my opinion, in the deluxe, and now I loathe her as a character. But I'm conflicted because I actually love how Draconis plays, and I've always kind of liked Liael Immorta as a deck in general, and I especially love this variant of it. So, the two halves of my heart are fighting. But anyways, let's get this one started and see what we got, because honestly, Draconis is an amazing upgrade over OG Liael, so let's see what we can do with this. First up, we have our energy generator. It's our ride deck crest. You move ride deck in your ride deck. Auto ride deck, when you ride, plus card to your crest zone. If you were second energy, charge 3. Continues to spend 10 energy, auto become your ride face energy, charge 3, and then act once per turn, energy plus 7, draw a card. All around pretty solid. You get a free 3 energy every turn. If you win second, you get an extra 3 on top of that. And if you ever have 7 or more energy at once, hey, in this deck you never will, you get energy plus 7 to draw. Honestly, it's a pretty solid card. For those of you that don't know, I'm a sucker for any main deck grade 3 that wants to have energy as a cost, especially if it's like 3 energy. Unfortunately, Liael doesn't have 3 energy as a cost, but it has a way to efficiently get her cost for energy. So this card is a mandatory in the deck to actually use Liael's skill. It's also mandatory in general because of ruling, so the start right deck crest. Moving on, we have our starter and player of the Oliphant Balnista. Greater 0 boost, 5k shield, 6k base. This is the first time I'm noticing there's a rainbow here. Auto and Rotopine for a second draw card. Standard starter and nothing too special. Just a free draw if you go second. You make this any starter you want. I chose to make it Balnista because it fits the Liael Immorta theme. Moving on, we have our Overtrigger and Light Dragon Deity of Honor's Armor Greater 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k power. Overtrigger, whenever triggering in your deck, or vote as a trigger, move that card, draw a card. Choose one means to give plus 1 million for the turn. And if it voted during a dread check, activate it's a dish effect, which you get to into end of turn also perform dread checks to the battle as your rear guard's attack. All around pretty solid because whether you dread check, someone gets a million and you get a draw. But if you drove check it, that means your rear guards get extra drive checks, and in this deck you can technically make it so your front row is always going to have twin drive or at least a single drive check with multi attack, meaning on your divine skill turn you're getting somewhere between 4 drive checks and 6 drive checks, or even 7 or 8 depending on how your board is set up, honestly. So pretty solid over trigger. I do recommend though that you either play as Foria or Walnut. Walnut for more consistent multi attacking, is Foria for crit pressure, but I prefer Armor Quinoa because I like running the nation respective over triggers in my deck profiles. Moving on, we have our normal triggers. First up, having 3 fronts in Bard of Heavenly Song All Pack. Grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 4k base, continues guard circle, 8 your points vanguards are grade 3 grade at 5,000 to shield. So she's 20k shield, she's a front trigger, so she has 10k to the front row. In my original variant of, not Draconis, but my last version of Liael, I did have draw triggers in place of this to try to increase hand cards, but after playing that out and also wanting to just play more aggressively, I chose to put in more fronts instead, and honestly it works really well with the overall offensive numbers of the deck. What I don't like about this deck is the thing that stayed true with Liael Immorta stays true here, where I will hard draw all of my crits, specifically Shovamia. Though I will say this, I have apparently gotten to the point with this deck where there will be times where I just sack triple crits. So compared to just hard drawing them and at least having a 25% chance of seeing triple crits, yeah, I'll take that honestly. Anyways, our 8 crits for them being Shovamia, grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k base. You can make this any vanilla crit you want just to make a Shovamia because Liael Immorta is half related to Raziel in terms of like lore wise, so I might as well have them both use the same crits. Then we have 4 Blade for the Dragon, grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 4k base, critical trigger, auto rear guard, battle booster, show soul, choose a unit, give it 2k for the turn. You can make this a vanilla crit if you want to, because 9 times out of 10 you're not calling this, and if you are calling it, you are in a very, like, basically you have to sack your way out of that situation to win. But I like having Blade Feather here in case that situation does come up, especially because soul is a very hefty resource in this deck, and there will be times where you run out of soul. And then we have our 4 heals and Bringer of Distance Aranus, grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k base. She's the heal here, the same reason as Shovamia is the crit here. It's half related to Raziel, so I might as well have them run the same triggers. Plus I consider Shovamia and Aranus a 2-pair card, which means if I want to run them, I gotta run the other one. You can make this any heal you want though. You can even make the counter heals, though personally I don't like the counter heals too much because they're fluctuating 10 to 25k shield. As for our grade 1s, we start with 2 copies of, this can technically be anything. I chose to make it this because I imagine the deck would run into a CV problem. It definitely does. Do I use it properly to not run into a CV problem? No, but there is a way to use it where you won't run into a CV problem, and that is Grogon. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, continues rear guard. If your unit was placed by the ability of your Vanguard Divine skill this turn, it gets auto rear guard by the boosted, retire it, and counter charge 1, and it also gets 5k. So something just by being placed by the Vanguard's ability automatically gets it 5k. And the best part is it's any unit. So it could be a rear guard that was superior called via Draconis ability, or the unit that was superior ridden via the Divine skill, and it would still get the 5k. On top of that, being able to retire itself and counter charge is great because Liael can then bind it from the drop zone on the following turn to get drive checks, and then you have a target in your bind zone that you can superior call via Liael Draconis' skill during the battle phase, and because any unit has to be place, it counts itself, so therefore it would get the 13k in the countercharge skill. And if you're wondering about how you would loop that back, well, Liael Morta is able to send the stuff in the bind zone back to your deck. That's the effective way to use it. How I use it, call to rearguard circle, literally never use its skill whatsoever, or if I do use its skill once, it automatically just stays in drop zone because I never want to bind it for some reason. So do what I did in the first explanation, don't do what I do in the second explanation. Moving on, we have 4 Swordsman of Twin Stains Estir, Great on Boost 5k Shield, AK base. I like how after the first game I played with this deck, I thought I didn't run any Instirs, or I thought I only ran 3 because I opened none of them, and then afterwards I saw all 4 consistently. Anyways, auto backward rearguard circle. When your rearguard on the same column as it is bound by the ability of your Grade 3 get a Vanguard Liael in the card name, stand it, not placed. So as long as something in front of it was bound, so God forbid you did something like attack with one column, attack with another column, have one of the columns have Istir behind it, pick the column that has Istir, bind the unit in front of it, let's say the Caribre, then you superior call Caribre to a different circle, stand Istir, use Caribre's skill, then superior call a unit to the circle that's in front of Istir now. That's a play you can make. Realistically, you're never going to do that, but that's just an option that you have. Either way, Istir, very solid grade 1, allows for consistent boosting with multi-attack decks because a lot of multi-attack decks die when they don't have consistent boosters, and this gives you that. So very solid Dwarf because he does it for free, which makes it a great card, and also has a lovely pink hair, and I love like pink hair on cards. And then we have 4 copies of our new support card for Liael, amazing grade 1, who I kind of hate how it screws over how you want to place Ishtir sometimes. Knight of the Distant Bow Almov. Great on Boost 5k Shield, AK base, auto place on your rearguard circle, choose a grade 3 card Liael in its card name from your right deck and you may reveal it. If you reveal a card or your Vanguard is already a grade 3 grade of Liael in the card name, and recharge 1. That's an incredible skill. That can be procced off the second you get this card into your hand, because again, it either reveals it from right deck or you're already at the Liael, and it's a free energy charge. So if you're playing against a deck that you have to energy charge as fast as possible, because maybe you need to use that energy generator to energy bot 7 to draw, just so you can have extra defense power from maybe that one card, Almov is a really great grade 1 for that. Realistically, you're never going to be in that situation, but I'm just making that point clear. And then auto rearguard at the end of the battle that it boosted. If your Vanguard's a grade 3 or greater Liael in the card name, and your opponent's Vanguard's also a grade 3 or greater, shove it to soul, and you the player, get all your front row rearguards get 5,000 power for the turn. So pretty much it gives you basically a plot and Ezel effect where your front row rearguards get 5k, which again is really good for multi-attacking. Unfortunately, that's only going to apply to the units after the attack that it boosted. So say for example this thing boosted a rearguard, which is what you intentionally want to do with it. Well, I mean, it's going to get you a soul, and grading your rest of your rearguard is going to get 5k, but unfortunately it's not going to affect the battle that already just happened. You can also put this behind the Vanguard, so that way you can put Ishtir on your side columns, though again, typically you want to use Almov on the side column rearguard, but you can do whichever feels better in that situation, because you know Almov opens up the rearguard circle. Then we have our 4 PGs and Bringer Protection Keflon, grade 1 boost, 0 shield, 6k base, continue set up 4 Sentinels in deck, and put on guard circle, choose a means, it cannot be hit in the battle, if your hand stream or cards, and choose a card from hand and discard it. Send a PG, nothing to about this means if this one a card is in your hand, plus on guard circle, you don't have to discard great, because that means super aggressive as one in the early game, and basically spam the living hell out of all your grade 1s, and then your opponent does eventually counterattack you, throw down Keflon, get the middle finger, and you're good to go. All around, I love this deck a lot because you can be a little bit more aggressive, and because Liael Draconis has like so many ways to have superior call targets, and you don't technically need specific pieces on your board as long as they end up in drop zone, it allows you to be a little bit more aggressive with the deck. And this deck consistently has 7 PGs in it technically, and it's able to just straight up search 3 of them, and typically you'll hard draw, at least for me, I'll hard draw the other 4. There was a game where I did actually have all 7 PGs in hand, so yeah, 4 of Keflon, very solid PG to have. And then we have our last grade 1 in the deck, one of them in the right deck, none in the main deck, of Player of the Lovely Harp Adorphus, grade 1 boost 5k shield, AK base, auto and wrote upon by Player of the Beautiful Court Eugenia, soul boss 1, draw 2 cards, choose up to 1 normal unit from your hand, discard it. If you did not discard a normal unit, choose 2 cards from your hand, discard them instead. So hopefully you're never in the situation where you have to just discard 2 triggers. I have been in that situation before. I tell you from experience that sucks, because when that happens, that heavily implies that you only had triggers in hand, so you just lost all of 30k guard power. Thankfully that only did happen once, but being able to just draw 2 cards and then ditch any normal unit is great, especially because it also fills up your drop zone, and it sets up Eugenia by having 2 normal units go into your drop zone, so once you get a third one in there, you can automatically use Eugenia's skill for free. Very solid grade 1 to have. You don't really need it in the main deck because obviously that has no rear guard skills, and it allows you to be a little bit more aggressive on your grade 2 turn, especially if you went first, because again, you're drawing 2 cards, so there's a chance you could draw grade 1. So one of them in the right deck of Adorphus. On to our grade 2s. 2 copies of the way to get board presence and then also get soul back, and that's Sequence Wizard. Grade 2 intercept 5k shield, 10k base, auto place on rear guard circle during the main phase specifically. If you have a grade 3 grade Vanguard Liael in the card name, CB1, check the top 5, choose a grade 3 less unit card from one, call to rear guard circle, shuffle the deck, and auto rear guard when your other unit is bound by your Vanguard's ability. This unit gets 5,000 power for the turn, and you may soul charge 1. All around pretty solid because except for a simple CB, you get a free rear guard to board, and on top of that, every time something's bound, it's getting 5k and a possible soul charge, not a mandatory soul charge. So if you're afraid of decking out, or you're afraid of seeing a trigger, or you stack the trigger to the top of the deck, you don't have to soul charge. But if you need the extra soul, there you go. The thing that I had with Sequence Wizard that I thought it wasn't going to show up too much because this is 2 of, but I've consistently drawn it every game outside of the first one because for some reason that first game I didn't see Ishtar or Sequence Wizard, but after that first game, saw Sequence Wizard consistently, saw Ishtar consistently, and again, like Grogon, I misplay with it where I choose not to bind the copy and drop zone, then just let it die. Yeah, no, be smarter than me. Once one of them ends up in drop zone, bind it so that way you can recall it later on. That doesn't do anything with superior call from deck during battle phase. It's still an extra rear guard that can get more numbers. So 2 Sequence Wizard, very solid, great dude to have in the deck. Next up, we have 4 copies of Source Saint of Itinerant Ideris. I don't know why. I like the fact that his bind skill that can proc off during the main phase is really nice to me. Great to SF 5k shield, 10k base, continues rear guard during turn. If your bind zone has a copy of it, it gets 10,000 power. So 20k base is incredible, and it's very easy to pull off in this deck. And then auto when is bound from rear guard circle during your turn. If you have a great 3 Vanguard blue in the card name, soul box 1, draw a card, give a Vanguard on your board plus 5k. All around pretty solid. It only takes 1 soul. It gets you a draw to replace itself, and he gives the Vanguard 5k, so you can proc that off during the battle phase, make the Vanguard an extra 5k more for 1 to pass or 2 to pass even. Not to mention the fact that before we got Draconis who could bind during the main phase, Ideris, most likely the first time you swing with it, was only going to be a 10k or an 18k depending on what his booster was because it doesn't have a copy and bind zone. But now that Draconis can bind before the battle phase, your first Ideris swing could very much be 20k, 28k, whatever his booster is, so that way you're consistently hitting good numbers. And again, you can always recycle them via Liael Morta, who you now don't have to worry about riding because, well, you have a better Liael. So 4 of Ideris. Very solid grade 2 to have, good with numbers, both itself and the Vanguard, and good with overall consistency. Next up, we have 4 copies of Knight of Bright Blade Liael. Grade 2 and 5k shield, 10k base, auto inputs on rear guard circle. If your Vanguard's a grade 3 grade Liael, soul boss 1, check the top 7 for up to 1 either grade 3 grade card Liael in the card name, or up to 1 Blessed Dragon Gabuelis from Unload Reveal to hand shuffle your deck. This card has 9 targets. No, it has 10 targets exactly. There are 3 main deck Dragonises, there are 3 Liael Mortas, and then there are 4 Gabuelias. So you have a 1/5 of your deck chance of technically hitting it off of Regio, which is all around a pretty solid bet that you can get any of your main important cards, either Persona Ride, PG, or really busted rear guard into the hand, and then continues rear guard circle during your turn. If your Vanguard's a grade 3 grade Liael, it gets 5,000 power, but if you have Blessed Dragon Gabuelis on either your rear guard or your bind zone, very easy to pull off in this deck, it gets an extra 10k instead of 5k. Again, all around pretty solid, especially because Liael Draconis, again, can bind during the main phase. That means your first attack with Regio could possibly 20k base against your opponent's grade 2 Vanguard, which is pretty solid, and Religio's on-place ability procs during both the main phase and the battle phase, meaning you can superior call her via Liael Draconis ability, and then being able to deck thin while you do your skill, so that way you can increase your chances of seeing triggers during your drag check. So for Religio, really good for searching basically your entire grade 3 lineup, which is incredibly important with their own different rights, and just a good beast stick overall. Next up, we have our last grade 2 in the deck, one of in the red deck, none in the main deck, of Player of the Beautiful Court Alginia, grade 2 and 5 Kashio, 10k base. I love the designer for Angel Wings. Auto and vote upon by a grade 3 card in the card name, choose any number of nomies from your drop zone, put them on your bottom of your deck in any order. If you chose 3 or more cards, draw a card. Again, very easy to pull off in this deck because you just soul boss out the starter via Dorfus, or you just soul boss Dorfus yourself, not to mention the fact that you just ditch a normie off of a Dorfus, so you automatically have 2 out of the 3 right there. Ditch any one card between the ride deck from either Alginia to Amorta, from a Dorfus to Alginia, or from Ballista to a Dorfus, and you'll automatically have your 3 normies. Or if your opponent is dumb enough to kill one of your rear guards, you automatically have Alginia. All around though, very solid card to have. Bot decks 3 normie units, get you a draw to replace them, so not a bad grade 2 to have as a one of in the ride deck, none in the main deck. As for our grade 3s, we start off with 3 copies of Faded One of Time Liael Amorta, or Liael equals Amorta because I like saying the equals. Grade 3 to 9% 30k base. Is it necessary to go over all this card skills? Not at all, because you're only going to use one of them ever, but I mean, might as well just in case. So Auto Vanguard, when it attacks into anything, count boss 1, choose one of your rear guards, bind it, and search your deck for up to 1 copy of that card called rear guard circle, shuffle your deck. Okay, so not bad. It allows multi-attacking with the same unit, so it does proc off things like Religio, Ideris. Doesn't work well with Sequence Wizard, but can still do that, and any of your grade 1 lineup as well, and also your Gabuelius over here if you have to stuck on it. And then we have the Divine skill. I'm going to skip the ability you're actually going to use for a hot second. The Divine skill being Auto Vanguard, the ability to attack into anything. If your opponent's Vanguard is a grade 3 or greater, choose a copy of this from your drop zone, ride it as stand, and if you do, it loses a drive for the turn. Again, never going to use it because Draconis' Divine skill is a straight up upgrade of that, and then a better version of it, and same with the first skill. However, the third skill, which is the skill Draconis doesn't have, or the middle skill technically, auto input on guard circle. Ditch a hand card and put 2 cards from your bind zone to bottom, and choose one of your units with Faded One in the card name. Thank God Liael Draconis keeps the Faded One name, and it cannot be hit till end of battle. Basically, she's a PG without being a PG, so if your opponent plays cards that specifically restrict Sentinels but not other things, ahem, Rifistor, Blagdemire, you can throw down a Morta and it would bypass it. The downside to a Morta is she does require a discard, and she also returns 2 units from your bind zone back to the bottom of your deck. But Draconis allows you to basically proc off Liael Morta every single turn because she gets you 2 cards guaranteed, 1 for main phase, 1 for battle phase, and if you Divine Skill it, it gets you 3 that turn. Not to mention the fact that, again, this deck gets enough hand cards to where you can kind of afford to use the discard, and it sets you up for your other PGs that require you to have less hand cards. So it's a very solid 3 of. I don't think you really need the 4th one. The deck already has enough PGs as is, not to mention the fact that Regiel can hard search this. So I don't think you need more than 3 of it, but if you want to put in the extra copy, you can. Next up, we have 4 copies of Blessed Dragon Gabuelius, grade 3 to 9% 13k base, auto placed on rearguard circle by any means, so whether hard calling from hand, superior calling via either the Liaels, you soul box 1, check the top card, and put it to either top or bottom. If you put it on top, you obviously put a trigger or a PG or something of great importance that you really need in your hand, or if you put it on bottom, it gets 5k for the turn. Okay, not bad, it's just a 5k boost, but I mean, that 5k boost can make the difference, especially with, Almov, because Almov makes a 23k base, plus the existence of Draconis over here, so not a bad skill at all. And then auto rearguard, when this unit attacks at anything, if your damage on has 4 more cards until end of battle, it gets 5,000 power again. So if you put something in the bottom, it's a 23k, possibly 28k with Almov, but also if it was put on rearguard by the ability of Vanguard with Fated 1 in the card name, Liael Draconis, or Liael Morta, if that was the case, and you have not performed drive checks for the battles your rearguard attack this turn, so it does kind of get screwed over by Armor to Know, but it does benefit from Armor to Know because it makes it basically you do your drive check for free. You can counterblast 1, and it gets 10k and loses a drive check instead of getting 5,000 power to perform drive checks during that battle. So not bad. It does eat into ZV, but again, if you see Armor to Know before you pull this skill off, I mean, you're basically getting more drive checks, so you're not losing the drive, and then you get to pull it off for free. And again, it still gets the numbers regardless if you try to give it drive checks or not. It's going to get the 5k regardless. It's not going to get the 10k unless you pay the CB, but it is able to stack the top card of your deck and also get even more numbers for an aggressive push. And basically, this is your all-around discard father for the deck. You see it before you use a Dorfus skill, discard it for a Dorfus. You see it for Riot deck, discard it. You discard it for Draconis, you discard it for everything because you can constantly reinsert it back into the bind zone and then flip it back via Liael Morta. Around a very solid grade to have for overall aggressive pressure. It is the reason this deck can run into a CB problem. That's why you want to spam Gargon and do what I explained earlier and basically loop Gargon back into the deck as much as physically possible. So for Blessed Dragon Gabuelius, very solid grade to have for all around offensive pressure. And sometimes if you think you can kill your opponent, willingly go to 4 or 5 damage on their first grade 3 turn before you hit grade 3, and then go Liael Draconis' face and pray to God you kill him. Because sometimes you can't win all that. I did that one game, not with this deck, but with Liael, but they can kind of do similar enough multi-attacking to where I feel like you can get away with it in this one. And as for our last card in the deck, we have 3 of in the main deck, 1 of in the right deck of basically a Battle Liael Morta, Fated 1 of Sacred Time, Liael equals Draconis, grade 3 to 9% 13k base. So this is the combination of Liael Morta and Blessed Dragon Gabuelius combined into one. I will say this, I miss saying Morta so much. So 3 skills, Act Vanguard once per turn, Energy Blast 4, bind a normal unit from your rear guard or from your drop zone. So if you don't have anything on board because your opponent board wiped you, well, you can pull from drop zone. And then you choose a card from your hand, discard it, and it gets a drive for the turn. The discard, as we learned from the anime, is not a part of the cost, it's a part of the skill. So say for example, let's just pull Erica's example from the anime. You start the turn off with 0 cards, you call the card that you drew before you do the skill, then you use the skill, bind from drop zone, Energy Blast 4, because you no longer have hand cards, you don't have to discard, but you still get the drive plus, so that's pretty solid. Second skill, Auto Vanguard, when it attacks at anything, counter blast 1, choose every rear guards, bind it, and search your deck for up to 1 card the same card name as any card in your bind zone, not the card that was bound, call to rear guard search for the deck. So of course, and most of the time, you're still going to be calling the thing that you bound. Could be Idiris, could be Regiel, maybe it will be Sequence Wizard, or even Gabuelius, but you can pick anything in the bind zone, because typically you're binding Gabuelius immediately, so again, if you need to use that as an aggro rush target, you can, or like you set up Idiris, but you don't have an Idiris on your board, so you had to do like Religial and Sequence Wizard plays, and you're out of Religials, where you can bind the Religial and still pull Idiris because it's any card from your bind zone if you have Idiris left in your deck. And then the final skill is the Divine skill, Auto Vanguard. I think about that attacking to anything. If your opponent's Vanguard's a grade 3 or greater, choose a grade 3 or greater with Liael incarnate from your soul or from your drop zone, and you may write it saying if you robe this unit's drive becomes 1 for the turn. So the differences are Liael Morta gives it a drive -1, Draconis makes a drive become 1. That is very specific for certain cards that don't exist in Liael, so we never have to worry about that ability, and unless they ever print stuff or make that worry, but I don't think they would, considering Draconis is just a straight up upgrade over Liael, because again, Liael has to bind and call the same unit, while Draconis can bind bind anything and still call a different unit. Not to mention the fact the Divine skill can now ride from Soul, meaning if you end up not having a copy in drop zone, or you don't have to hard discard one for ride deck to go for game, you don't have to, especially if one ends up in Soul via Sequence Wizard. Just saying. And, you know, if you end up not having enough Soul Blasters for your deck, or like in your hand at the time, and you Persona Ride, you don't have to worry about trying to pull out a copy from somewhere else, or trying to like see it in a drive check, because now you have a copy in Soul. Again, preferably you choose to do it from drop zone, but if you have to ride from Soul, or like you misplay like I did on my last match on camera with this against Juicy Fruit, you can. So all around, very solid grade 3. Get you drive checks for an incredibly cheap cost, not to mention the fact that she can basically be an upgraded Liael Immortal, where she binds anything and calls anything, and her Divine skill is basically a buff version of Liael's Divine skill. And she keeps a faded one name, meaning you can use OG Liael with her. So very solid 3 of the main deck, 1 of in the right deck. And I just love her design. And without further ado, that's it for this one. I hope all of you guys enjoyed. Honestly, Draconis is a very solid upgrade, because not only does she get drive checks to help fix the hand problem that I feel like a lot of people had with Liael, at least when it first came out, or at least in my opinion, I had a hand problem with Liael, but they upgraded the one problem that it had with his multi-attack skill, and the Divine skill, which technically didn't need an upgrade. I mean, like, it wasn't bad. Like, there was still obviously room for improvements, as evidenced by Draconis over here, but it ended up making the Divine skill a lot better than what it probably needed to be. And again, because of how the deck works, you can afford to run OG Liael and basically have a total of 7 to 8 PGs. So it's all around very solid deck. I do love playing this a lot. I love the idea behind Liael combining with Gadwellis, even if I loathe Erica with my Living Soul. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and join us for Twitch. I'll see you all in the next one. Dark Snap, you're the Vanguards.